Perek Cheskes Habatim Daf Nun Gimel, sponsored the Refuah Shlema for Yeshivas Rabbi ben Elisheva Chana. The Gemara previously stated where a seller is present when his purchaser takes possession, he is not required to demonstrate approval of his action, whereas when he is not present, he must instruct him, Lech, Chazek, V'kani. The Gemara brings a machlokas concerning the recipient of a gift. Rav holds we can rely, one gives a gift generously, even before the recipient acquires. Even if the giver is not present when the recipient takes possession, he needs no instructions to acquire. Shmuel holds only after the gift is received can the generosity of the giver determine the extent of the gift. However, before the acquisition, he must demonstrate his approval by stating, Lech Chazek V'kani, otherwise he may have reneged. The Mishnah states, even if the recipient of a property performs a minor change, it constitutes a chazaka. Shmuel defines the nature of a minor change. Number 1, godar, completing an existing fence to 10 cubits, making it more difficult to climb. Number 2, parats, a pirza, breaching a fence, difficult to enter, allowing easy access. Number 3, no'al. According to the Rashbam, it means either closing an existing breach to make access more difficult or fixing a lock to the door. The Gemara describes other proprietary acts. Number 1, placing a stone in a dike to irrigate a field or removing a stone from a dike to allow water into the field. Closing a dike to prevent water from flooding or draining the water out is mavriach ari, chasing away a lion. It is the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda to return a lost object, not a proprietary act. The Gemara discusses a proprietary act on ownerless property performed to one property. Can it acquire a second adjacent property with a border between them? Number 1, his intention was to acquire both by way of his action. To one, he acquires only the one he acted on. However, if he intended by way of his action to acquire only the adjacent property, he acquires neither of them. Number 2, the Gemara does not resolve the case where he intended to acquire the border as well. Is it one contiguous property, or because the border is higher or lower, it divides them? Number 3, the Gemara does not resolve the case where he performs a proprietary act on the border to acquire both properties. Perhaps he can acquire both, similar to one acquiring an animal by its reins. Or perhaps the reins acquire because they are attached to the animal, but the border is not attached to the property. The Gemara presents a similar inquiry concerning 2 adjacent apartments, one inside the other, where he did a proprietary act on the outer one. Number 1, if his intent was to acquire the outer one, or even both, the outer and inner, he acquires the outer but not the inner. He has no rights to the inner one. Number 2, if he did a proprietary act to the inner one with the intent to acquire even the outer one, he acquires both, because in a sense the outer is subordinate to the inner, whose access is only by way of the outer. However, if his intent was to acquire the outer by way of the inner, he acquires neither of them. One who builds a mansion on the ownerless property of a convert without doors that another adds, he acquires, because he rendered the mansion useful. If the mansion was completely built, one who plasters or engraves a design on a wall opposite the doorway, an amma square, acquires. One who benefits from the convert's ownerless property by lying on the ground acquires even though he did not improve it. One can acquire a Canaanite slave similar to acquiring property. He puts on or removes his master's shoes, carries his clothing to a bathhouse, undressed him or bathed him or clothed him, or lifted him into bed. There's a machlokas if the master can acquire the slave by a hagbah, by lifting. Tanakama holds since it is not customary to lift people, he does not acquire. Rabbi Shimon holds lifting is unique because it acquires even in the domain of the seller. If you're enjoying Daf 5, please click on the link below, subscribe, and become a sponsor.